just start talking whenever you need.
All righty, I can. And I was assigned to Squadron 7, Flight 7, and Barracks 107, and actually it was what is now called Lakeland Air Force Base, but back then it was part of Kelly Field Duncan Air Force Base, and the initial training center where they tested you for various things and put you through all kinds of physical training to see if you were able to contend. And then they, as I said, then they put you from into classification, and then they put. Anyways, I was one of those that were made a cadet, and actually assigned to a cadet in a class. I was going to be 43E or F, and ended up. Anyways, they get somebody got the measles, and they had to quarantine the whole barracks. And the barracks consisted of old World War II, two-story barracks there. That you had the chief of the barracks had the first room as you come in, the bottom, the first floor door, and then at the back of the first floor was the urinals and everything, where you took showers and did your bath duties. And the lower classmen, which we were considered, were on the first floor, and the upperclassmen were on the second floor. And we had what happened is we had our assigned duties. We were up at 6 o'clock in the morning and went through very, very rigorous training on athletics mostly, then weaponry. We taught how to handle a rifle, and we had our share of patrol duty, and they called it on the line. They called it, and the upperclassmen had really control over you, and some of them, you would say in those days we had hazing. Hazing was the name there because nobody'd ever think of not having hazing. So they would haze us all the time, and various different means and words and actions. And when they upperclassmen, you happen to be in the room, or in the lower barracks were wide open. And then you had your bunk beds, you had your trunk. Your trunk was what you lived out of. That's where all your clothes and everything else were. And you lived out of that, and you kept that thing open, and a certain method of keeping it, it had to be just so. Your bed had to be made to a certain extent that it was so flexible and so tight that they actually would take a quarter, and this upperclassman would take a quarter and drop it on the bed, and if the quarter didn't bounce up, why, he'd just grab hold of the bed. Of course, you had a collar on the bed, and a special, 6-inch collar, and they'd measure the collar to see if it was 6 inches or 6 1/4 inches, and if you had 6 1/4 inches, they'd also just grab the bed and pull it apart, and you'd have to redo the whole thing. And that was done very often. And one of the upperclassmen nailed me for his own stoogie, I guess. And he said, I think you'd be a good time corporal. So, in other words, when anybody would come in the room, in the lower classmen, going into entering the barracks, they'd say, time, and I'd have to pop up no matter what I was doing, and if I happened to be seated, why, I would have to stand up, and the chair that I was sitting on had to bounce away, at least 3 feet away from where I was standing, and I'd say, yes, sir, the time, sir, is exactly so-and-so, look at the watch, and thank you, and then they'd go upstairs or do whatever they were doing, and then they'd come in sometimes and say, okay, Mr. Reese, this one guy used to get me, he was a schnook, and he'd get me, and he'd say, "Mr. Reese." "Yes, sir." And he said, "Oh, would you do me a favor and back against that wall, please? Back to the wall." So I'd look around, get the wall he was talking to, and back up to it. And he'd say, "All right, now, are you at attention?" And I'd say, "Oh," and I'd hit a brace, what we called a brace. That was what attention was. And he said, "Oh, okay, Mr. Reese. Now, I want you to keep your head against the wall and take one step forward." And so I would do that, and while in the brace, standing at perfect attention, and I'd keep my head against the wall and I'd take one step away from the wall. And he said, "Oh, now I think it's time for you to take another step away from the wall." And so you take another step in the wall, away from the wall. And I don't know what you think this is, because about that time you were about 40 degrees away, your feet were away from the wall. And then he'd say, "Oh, can you do just a little bit more? Give me the third step forward, Mr. Reese." And and keeping your head against the wall and being at attention, this was very, very difficult, let me tell you. And so we do it, and then he'd start talking. If there was another upperclassman, he'd start talking to the other classman while I'm in this position, leaving me there, And I'm holding this position, and I'm telling you, it was tough. And then, he turned around. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Reese. Would you release yourself and come back to regular attention?" So, fine and dandy, you endured all of these various things, and guys were assigned certain duties that were just, it sounded impossible in some cases. They didn't injure you to such an effect like that. And they certainly didn't touch you. That was one of the things you couldn't. But the worst part, I think, was what we had was called three-point eating. You got up and everything was a formation that you went to in cadets. And you get into the dining room in order. You'd march in the dining room. You had assigned seatings. You'd get up, pull your chair back, get in, sit on your chair. Wouldn't lean back against your chair. Just pull your chair up as much as you could, and stay in as rigid as you could, and looking across to your upperclassman who was across from you, and with your eyes straight ahead. And if your eyes wandered, "Oh, Mr. Reese, are you interested in real estate or something that you've got to look around this place?" "No, sir." You straighten up and keep your eyes straight ahead. "All right, you can start eating now." And they'd pass the stuff, and you'd have to dish this out while you're looking straight ahead. Whatever it was, potatoes or veggies of anything, meat or whatever, you take it and put it on your plate. And then when you had enough sufficiency, then what you did, you ate it with a knife and fork or whatever, in what they called a square meal. You saw it and then brought it into your mouth, and you went down and back down into your food, got your food, brought it up, went back and forth. And so you can imagine that you didn't get a heck of a lot of food eaten. Once you were through, why then you rest your hands, and you'd be looking straight ahead all the time. And another one was, "Oh, Mr. Reese, would you do me a favor?" "Yes, sir." "Would you get up here and tell us how you can search for incoming aircraft?" "Yes, sir." You'd grab 2 bottles of ketchup or something, and you'd stand up at the table, and you put them to your eyes, and you look all around the place. "And no aircraft approaching, sir." And then you get back down in your chair. And this was just some of the ways that they put you through. And it was very difficult, to say the least, to see them nothing. But then what happened, was the nicest part, was that they had what they call turnabout day.